Welcome to another CMC podcast. Today we're doing part 2 of the podcast series on the MRA, the Mountain Rescue Association. And joining us, we have Doug McCall. Doug, you want to say hi?
Hi, Doug. Doug McCall, the President of the Mountain Rescue Association and a member of Seattle Mountain Rescue in Seattle, Washington, and a former, retired volunteer firefighter, swiftwater rescue tech, rope rescue tech, trench rescue tech, which never got to use, and trying to put it all together into a mountain rescue format. So, I think that's my background here.
Very good. Welcome again. And also joining us today, we have Monty Bell. Monty.
Hi, Doug and everybody else listening. This is Monty Bell. I'm the current membership chairman for the Mountain Rescue Association and currently the California Region MRA chairman as well. And I oversee all of the MRA's accreditation and reaccreditation that we do. And good to be here.
Excellent. Well, thanks again to both of you for joining us. I know the last one, the last podcast we did, we definitely ran out of time. We had a lot of subjects we wanted to talk about. And as is typical, we get towards... we try to keep them around 45 minutes, and on that one, I think we were pushing an hour. Looked down, and we hadn't even gotten through many of the notes that we had that we wanted to talk about. So maybe if we could start out today talking about standards and as they relate to the MRA.
Yeah, sure. I may defer to Monty on this one. We have in our accreditation process, we accredit in snow and ice, search, and technical rock. And the standards that we follow are demonstrating competence in each of those disciplines. Each region may have its slight variations of their testing and their accreditation process based off of those standards, but we follow those pretty closely. Monty, I may defer to you from the standard process for how we're doing along the membership or the accreditation side.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. So like Doug was saying, so we don't have standards. I want to put that out there. We have, basically guidelines and that we want people to our member teams to be able to attain. And the reason we don't set a specific standard is that because each region operates in a different environment, right? So at the end of the day, we want to make sure that they pull off the rescue, the search in a safe manner, but also be cognitive of the region that they're in, right? So California region, north and south, we have different areas of an environment than, let's say, our desert mountain region, right? So the desert mountain region has their own type of environment. So what we try to instill is that this is the criteria that you need to attain, but how you get there specifically is really up to what your county and team requires that to do. Now that said, we're all benchmarked the same way, and that is is the system that you're putting together, is the operation that you're doing, is that being performed as a best practice? In other words, it's the best way out there performing that particular way of doing it. And then is it the safety factor and what does that have in it, right? So those are kind of the big things that we do. It's kind of a neat way, the accreditation part of it or the reaccreditation part of it is sort of unique because what happens is that the national organization says that you must be reaccredited every 5 years. But some regions, like my region here in California, what we end up doing is that we actually reaccredit each discipline every 3 years. And our type of reaccreditation, what that looks like is we bring all of our teams together one time over a long weekend, and a scenario is put in place. Currently, next year's is going to be in Joshua Tree National Park. It'll be our technical rescue. We'll probably have 350, maybe 400 people attend that because we've got over 20 teams. All of them are going to be doing their own part. They're going to be evaluated. It's all peer review. So they'll be evaluated individually, and they'll all be doing a rope rescue, technical rescue, medical scenario. And it's quite the event. Now, other regions, for example, Rocky Mountain region in Colorado and New Mexico in that particular area, they have a team accredited in all 3 different areas. So we've got snow and ice, we've got technical rescue, and we've got search and tracking. They actually perform all of those in one scenario. So one team at a time does it. They're usually evaluated by usually 15 plus evaluators that are watching that team perform, and they do all of it in a single weekend. So it's kind of all over the place.
Wow.
So but they have the environment, right? So I mean, like here in California, snow year round is not, it's very difficult, and we have a lot of teams, so we're not able to do that, and that's why we do ours every 3 years. That works great for us. So.
Yeah, I know we talked last time about it. It's kind of interesting how you guys split the accreditation up between the 3 years like that. The question I want to ask was that the standards now, is it MRA has set the standards then that you use? Or do you use like an...
No. We actually have our own. So,
Okay.
So we, over all of the years of experience, we've looked at what, works best in our type of environment. And so we've created our own. And the only time we've deviated from that is that we actually created a secondary one where, and I can't remember the exact policy, but it was at the time when FEMA was trying to put together a national standard for search and rescue, believe it or not. They formed a task force, and I can't remember what the name of that task force was. But what they were doing was they were trying to not come up with their own standard, but what they wanted to do was take a little bit from from ASTM, NFPA, anything else like that. And as long as you had a seat at the table, you were able to insert your particular standard and criteria in their document. And if you did that, then it got grandfathered in. And then when they put out this standard for National Search and Rescue Standard, there's a little bit of NFPA in there. There's some ASTM stuff. There's a lot of mountain rescue because we were really vocal. And so now that particular criteria for teams that seek that level of or that certain level, it's a lot more in depth because again, it's our standard stuff that's included, but also these other entities as well that had contributed to that FEMA document. So the document got created and it never really went as a rollout across the board to say, hey, this is what everybody needs to have to be nationally, acceptable to FEMA. And the reason they came up with that was because they were starting to get some of these requests from mutual aid from other states, and they wanted to make sure that everybody kind of had the same level of experience, right? So that was the reason it came out. So besides that particular standard that we came up with, which is a higher level, the rest of our standards, for the most part, have been, been in place for our pretty much our entire existence, and they do get modified, every so many years as the latest and greatest new thing that's now acceptable that gets now incorporated into it, or things, for example, that are no longer really utilized. For example, here in California and just across the U.S., doing searching for emergency for ELTs, airplane, downed aircraft, using the DFing advice and all of DFing equipment and all of that has really kind of changed in the last 10 years on how that particular search is being done. So, for example, those kind of things get removed, but then new things get added in to keep everybody proficient and current.
Okay. And then as far as the standards go, are they kind of more of a destination type standard, or is there a roadmap, i.e. when you look at like a JPR or a task book item or whatever you want to call it, is it, you'll be able, like for the technical rescue portion, that you'll be able to do a haul system, or is it a specific, does it get down into the minutia of what type of haul system it's going to be and so on?
Well, I can take that. So it's not, there is some general topics that building a haul system, passing a knot, for example, things like that, right? But, the 3-to-1, the 4-to-1, those kind of things, pig rigs and all those kind of wonderful things. We leave that up to the individual team to decide whatever gear that they have that works best in their environment for what they utilize. But we do want to make sure that you can do a haul, a raising, a lowering, those kind of things, whatever, works best. Some teams, specialize, like my team does a lot of Tyrolean type of rigging because we have some canyons that we have to get people down to. We can't necessarily get down to the old fashioned way. And so we do some things like that. So, we have the basic general criteria, and then the finite details is really up to you. And that's kind of the unique thing about the MRA is that we don't get really into that sort of tactical aspect of it. We tell you what the intent is and the level you need to be proficient at. But then after that, how you do it and how you get there, as long as it's safe and what works in your environment, then that's the best practice.
That's an important concept of that the MRA does not dictate to teams what system they're going to use. And it allows teams to, in some cases, I'll say experiment, but experiment comes with a lot of questions of failure and things like that. But it allows teams some leeway and some opportunity to advance the rigging systems and to work on lighter systems that they may want to deploy in a rigging environment, to the point of the team has to show competence and safety in the execution and knowledge of their system, so that when the evaluator is looking at their system, we may talk before the evaluation to say, hey, we're using a Scarab and 3-to-1 for our raise, but we're going to use the Scarab for a lower, and we're going to use a twin tension system, and we'll have a Prusik as in front of the Scarab as a hands-free capability or as a whistle test problem. So we'll want to make sure that team really understands the concepts and the functioning of that system in the various different ways that can be deployed, so that when we accredit that team, we know that they know exactly how their system runs, they know the limitations of their system, and they know when to employ it and when not to employ it. That's the key on the accreditation. It allows for innovation in rigging. You may not get a chance to say, okay, everyone's going to run a brake rack with double Prusik belay or something. It allows us to try different things that we think advances the rigging systems and selfishly helps make them lighter for the folks who want to go light and fast.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I got to say that probably some of the most innovative lightweight systems I've ever seen came out of MRA teams. I know when looking at like the titanium Scarab and the smaller diameter ropes and everything being used, some of it was almost mind-boggling coming from a fire service background where people were a little nervous to go from 5/8 to 1/2 inch. And now, you look at some of the real small diameter ropes that you guys are using and some of the really innovative ways that you do, and the systems you've come up with. I know at IDRS a couple of years ago, Portland Mountain Rescue showed their a really interesting pike and pivot maneuver. So I would say that the way that you've got your accreditation set up is definitely not only enhancing new techniques, but really promoting the innovation.
Yeah, and one last thing I'll say on the innovation is that a lot of the innovation goes through, there's hours and hours and hours of testing and non-live loads and time spent in drop towers and slow pull tests. And I know my team just recently moved over to a lightweight system that Gordy Smith presented at IDRS, and it went through a lot of testing before we moved it into essentially production.
Kind of interesting for our team's perspective. The interesting thing is that for the longest time, our team was only allowed to use 1/2 inch rope and all steel beaners. And the reason is that because our county, the person that put the technical rescue together, as you probably imagine, was a fire captain, right? And so that was our county standard. We were chomping at the bit forever because we were the ones that were having to, carry that out into the backcountry to do these things. And, within the last, 6 or 7 years ago, we were able to finally convince the authorities that we can change to these, these safe ways of doing it, but with lighter material because of advancements in technology and just that kind of stuff. And a lot of that reason we were able to make that convincing argument is that because of things that came out of IDRS and NADRS and all that stuff came out of that research and that documentation stuff from CMC that we were able to point to, see this will work and be safe. And this is what other teams in like the MRA that are utilizing, that go out in that backcountry and pack this stuff in, that are more than just a car over the edge. And so it's been really cool.
Yeah, it seems like the lightweight movement is definitely getting more and more embedded into the entire rescue community. Because I know a few years back when we introduced G11, everyone's all happy. Hey, we got G-rated 11, and everyone's like, yeah, so we want to see T9. Okay. So.
Yeah, I just wish they would have made that change when I was younger going in the field instead of me having to schlep that half-inch rope and all those steel beaners along with my own stuff. But that's okay.
Yeah.
At least the new people can appreciate that.
So, and actually, that's kind of a nice lead-in into some of this other stuff, obviously to prepare for accreditation and then also to make sure you're mission ready. We talked a little bit about some of the types of training that you guys do in the different teams and then also in the different regions. So maybe, Doug, you want to kind of start us out with some of the stuff you're doing? Maybe we can get a little bit more in depth now into the types of trainings that you're offering.
From the MRA level, we're offering. COVID was a challenge for us, and as it was for many teams and for many rescue agencies, that you're training. How do we continue to train and maintain our proficiency when we're not allowed to see each other, when we have to be 6 feet apart? And it's hard to be 6 feet apart when you're on a litter unless you're just at the head and the toe. Much less if you're on a rigging system and you're hauling or you're an attendant. So some of the things that at the MRA level we did, we talked a little bit about this in the first podcast, but is our Third Thursday program, and which is a live Zoom training that we do on, interestingly, the Third Thursday, as it's titled after, and we're bringing in experts from not just the MRA. We have a vast knowledge of experts in the MRA, whether it's medical experts, rigging experts, and snow and ice, avalanche experts. So we're bringing those folks in, and they're providing general education topics for our members. We record those topics and we post those to our the MRA YouTube channel. And but we're also bringing in folks that will help MRA teams in doing their roles as well. So we've brought in some folks from CalTopo to come in and do a presentation to talk about different ways that you can use that tool if you're using that tool in a search. We're always looking for new and innovative ways to continue that Third Thursday training. One other thing that we expanded the Third Thursday training was, one of the great things I love about the MRA is that when you go to these meetings, the spring conference or the winter business meeting, there's inevitably quite a bit of talk about, on this last mission we did this, and you get to hear the war story, so to speak, from other members from around the MRA. And I was talking with Michael St. John, who's been running the Third Thursday program, and came up with that concept. We decided to create a MRA major mission review, and with the idea that we would do a mission debrief, just like you would after any mission, after any fire, after any major response that you've done. You want to debrief, hey, what did we do well? What could we have done different? What do we want to make sure we always do, what make sure we never do, kind of thing. When we talk about we called it a major mission because there's likely a major mission going on in the MRA at least once a month. You figure around the country, there's going to be a major mission that happens. And major mission is not somebody who is at the top of a mountain who forgot their headlamp or their flashlight. It's a major mission where it has complexities that incorporate rigging or searches or even snow travel. So we do those major mission reviews on a quarterly basis during our Third Thursday program. We kind of keep that one as a closed door session to MRA teams and MRA members. And we don't record those because we want to create a safe environment so that our members can talk about what went well, what didn't go well. But the most important pieces from that is the sharing of knowledge that comes from that major mission debrief. I always get a ton of information listening to to folks, just talk about their mission, I can relate immediately of going, oh yeah, I could totally see how that could have happened. Or in the next mission, I want to make sure I do exactly what this other team did, or something similar, because that really helped them in the way and helped them execute their mission. So those are some of like our training that we went down the path of to reach our members during COVID. And I think, even though we're still in the midst of this pandemic of some sort, that we're going to continue this Third Thursday program, because it has shown success, and we are getting a good level of attendance and participation from membership. The one last thing on that is we are opening up the Third Thursday, the general Third Thursday, to a broader audience. So that link to the Third Thursday program is on the MRA.org website under training, and anyone is going to be able to attend those.
And I see you've put up several of the Third Thursday trainings and on YouTube also. So if they can't make it live, they're able to go and watch and
yes,
listen to
exactly.
ones you've done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, very good. Well, I think too, it speaks volumes about the organization and how mature and trusted the teams are with each other, to be able for somebody to open up and share with other teams in that format, about, and not necessarily everything that went right, but more importantly, get people to open up about with areas for improvement or what maybe didn't go the best. That speaks volumes in an organization. It can set the bar, and people step up and do that, because it is, like you said, it's such a great learning opportunity.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I love. I mean, I love about the MRA is, so here in Seattle, just a quick example, we had a heat wave that came through over the summer. Our members, unless you're acclimatized to the heat, just like acclimatized to altitude, if you're not acclimatized to heat, it impacts you pretty significantly. And when your median temperature in the Seattle area, let's say even in the mountains, in the summer is probably in the 70s. On a hot day, it's in the 90s, and you're suddenly getting temperatures over 100 degrees, that impacts your responders and impacts how you're going to approach a rescue situation. It allowed me to call our folks who are in Arizona and talk to them and say, hey, you guys do this every day. Every mission you go on, it's over 100 degrees. What can you tell us? And the one thing I had mentioned is like they carry, I think, like 5 liters of water, which in Seattle and Northwest, we have a luxury of, if it's that hot, there's probably snow or melt happening, and we should be able to access a river of some sort. So as long as we bring a filter, we should be okay. Plus 5 liters of water seems really heavy to carry. So I have actually a whole new respect for those teams.
Yeah, I listened to the podcast, or the presentation was done by the people on your YouTube channel. It was an excellent training. I picked up a lot from it. So
yeah.
And I'm not a mountain rescue guy, but definitely some tips on hydration, maximum amounts that you can drink, and so on. I thought that was very good.
Yeah.
So kind of along the lines of training too, we had kind of just touched on it at the last podcast, but MRA was one of the founders basically, and was one of the initial players in getting the NATRS, the North American Technical Rescue Symposium, which predated ITRS, the International Technical Rescue Symposium. But MRA was one of the two organizations that made that happen, you guys and NASAR. And you're still a very important part of ITRS, and you're one of the co-sponsoring agencies. You guys want to talk about kind of your guys' role, in that?
Yeah, so the MRA continues to participate in ITRS. We support everything that organization does and produces. I think, like you were saying, some of the lighter weight systems or new systems that have come out from MRA teams. And having a organization like ITRS out there allows us to, one, I'm a project manager at heart. It sets a deadline for somebody to get their stuff done. so it's I want to. It goes from the idea of concept of, it'd be cool if we could try and test this thing out, but it puts some rigor around the testing, and it puts some deadlines to be able to provide that to IDERs, and you have to submit your paper, and then you have to actually go. You're not necessarily defending your paper. At least the last IDERs I attended, there was not a defense of papers. However, I have been at IDERs in the past where there's been questions about invalid, super valid questions around, hey, did you think about this? Or what about if this happens? And what about your forces when you drag this over a certain type of tree or something? So I think MRA and IDERs work really well together. One of the things that the MRA does provide is a grant program so that if teams are looking, when I say teams, if anyone's looking for grant money, the MRA has grant money available for testing rigging systems that can be made available. There's an application for that grant online. It's actually pretty straightforward. It has some requirements that it should apply to search and rescue activities, and you also have to share your data and your information with the MRA. But in that grant program, there are funds that are available to if you need to buy equipment. Monty reminded me that we have a load cell that is essentially, it's on loan. So if you have an idea that you want to test and you need a load cell to look at exactly what you've got, what forces you're experiencing, we have that load cell available for, essentially it's on loan, and you essentially check it out, you do your testing, and then you send it back. But that's all part of the grant program. And I think that's how, one way that MRA can helps continue that, to foster innovation with IDERs, and in that, what I think is a fantastic partnership.
Just to tag on to that, going back to the NADERS Day and then there's a transition to IDERS, the relationship that we've had has been fantastic because it basically, as I mentioned earlier, it aligns perfectly with the MRA mission statement, and that is disseminating information. And so, I look at that and thoroughly enjoyed all of the ones that I attended. I used to tell people it's like a peer review. It's almost like the American Medical Association's version, the technical version of that, where people do a presentation. And back in the day, it was very there was a lot of critique going on, which was great because it gave you an excellent forum to be able to present the research that you've been looking into or thinking about and showing your data, and then having everybody else in the audience, be it people that specialize in search and rescue, mountain rescue, technical rescue, firefighters, all of those people, to be able to look at what you're presenting. And, number one, it takes a lot of courage to be able to do that. But once it's gone through that filter, and then even into the evening, when the people are still getting together, and that's where, that's when the fun happens, that people are still discussing because they have such passion for that particular topic, that, what comes out the other side is, things are tweaked a little and things are made a little bit better. But that would have never happened if it wasn't for that IDERS forum. It just never would. The reason the grant came from the MRA was that, years ago we were sitting back looking, and the one chief complaint people had was, we have a lot of good ideas that we would like to present, but we just don't have the money or the manufacturer backing to be able to run these tests and do it. And so that's when we decided to commit funds each and every year for the MRA grant that allows specifically for people to do that testing, to do that research, people that didn't have the financial sponsorships from anybody else, and that they could, when it's all done, they could make that presentation in front of their peer group and show everybody how the sausage is made. And again, to this day, I look back at things that we're utilizing today that came out of, either a NADERS or an IDERS presentation. And I look back at the PowerPoint presentation or the paperwork that was just, provided us 15, 20 years ago. And I look at that when on certain things that back then it was in concept, but today, it's a standard practice across everybody. I just get such a rush out of that because it's like, wow, I was there when the person that came up with that, either that failure of a particular device or the added benefit of using another type of device from concept to today, where it's, oh yeah, it's best practices. We do that all the time. And I go, I was there when the person that came up with that theory, and it wasn't so easy when he did that presentation initially, right? But now it's like, oh yeah, we do that all the time. So it's awesome.
And it's definitely got much kinder and gentler over the years as far as the feedback loop. Yeah,
it's true.
But you're right. It really is a forum for innovation. So we're really glad to hear about the grant program. And I know Doug made a pitch for that at IDERS this year to hopefully get people involved. And I know we talk quite a bit about IDERS and NADERS on these podcasts, but for good reason. It is really one of the best networking opportunities and one of the best forums for new information to come out. And I'll just kind of pitch in something else we've mentioned on a couple of other podcasts, is that if you've got a good idea of what you want to do for some testing, all the manufacturers are generally very, very supportive of this. So in addition to your grant, and we talked about it in our Thanksgiving Day podcast, Kelly brought up, whether it be PMI, Sterling, CMC, and other manufacturers are all very willing to help out as long as there's a good plan for the testing and what you want to accomplish as far as providing some rope and webbing and equipment and so on. So don't be shy about reaching out if you have a good idea, because like I said, that's how we've gotten where we're at, and that's how we're going to move into the future. Some of the early testing and a lot of the techniques we were doing, is to say it was backyard testing is an understatement. But that's really what leads the innovation, though.
Excellent point.
Yeah. Sure.
And it kind of on even a bigger scale than IDERS or NADERS, what about ICAR? How is MRA involved in ICAR?
So MRA has been involved with ICAR for, you actually don't know how long. It's been for as long as I can remember. And for a long time, I think we were participants or attendees. And most recently, the MRA has started to become involved in the leadership of ICAR and taking leadership roles in that group. ICAR is the International Commission of Alpine Rescue, and we work with them. It's almost an expansion of the MRA in a way, is that of how the MRA works is that we share at the MRA, we share information at the national level. ICAR they're doing rescues really a lot in Europe. You think of the Alps, the Dolomites, in those areas. And it allows us to work with our international brethren to learn how are they doing stuff. I mean, rescue is very different in Europe than it is, I think, in the United States. Europe, it's a really much smaller area, but they do a lot of a lot more helicopter work, I think, than we do. As a lot of our rescues start to have more helicopter involvement, we work very closely with them. Charlie Szymanski is, I don't remember the title, I have to apologize to Charlie for that, but he is essentially heading up the Commission of Air Rescue for ICAR. That really helps us share the knowledge that Europeans and the international community has learned in helicopter rescue. Also, we get to share the information that we have in terrestrial or in high-angle rescue, rock rescue, and snow and avalanche. And snow and avalanche has been really, as we move into that season in North America, that's been a really area of interest lately because of all the different advances in rescue techniques and the advances in actually personal safety in rescue. Now, most people who go into the backcountry, who go into snow environments, are carrying beacons and they're carrying shovels and probes. We want to make sure from the MRA perspective that we get more of that use. And even then, one of the things I think that came out of the international community was this idea of an airbag and being able to help float an individual above. If you get caught in an avalanche and you're not going to get caught up in essentially what is effectively a strainer for an avalanche. If you're not going to get caught up in a trauma situation hitting trees, that airbag can actually help float you. It's not necessarily going to save your life, but it gives you a much greater chance. And the idea that we get to share those learnings and that knowledge with the international community, I think it helps improve rescue on a global scale. And I think that's important, not just for MRA, but for, I would say, for our customers, for the people who are going to rescue on a daily basis.
To dovetail on what Doug said, the great thing about ICAR, I kind of look at ICAR as being the eiders of alpine rescue, right? So you've got, a lot of great research and a lot of great things coming out of the international community just because of their environment and what they're, you've got everything from the volunteer rescue teams there in the international community, but then you also have the paid professional rescue teams. And to what Doug said, regarding the helicopter rescue, especially at the alpine environment and the mountainous terrains, you think of the Dolomites, you think of Chamonix and all of those, the Swiss Alps and all of those different types of environments, which is their backyard. And, everything from medical research that has come out from that community and has been disseminated, amongst everybody there. But the MRA having not only a seat at that table and been involved in it for a very, very long time, but actually having leadership roles in each of the committees, be it the medical community, the avalanche committee, the helicopter committee, the terrestrial committee, the different committees actually having seats at that table to participate in those conversations and the demonstrations. And then on top of that, the great thing is that the MRA has, we have a team that goes there, and for the rest of our members, they actually do record a lot of the events and the meetings and the outside demonstrations, and they package that video up to be able to disseminate to the rest of our teams here in the U.S. that don't have the ability to travel abroad. And so it's a great relationship, just the MRA partnering with eiders and the MRA partnering with ICAR are two great things that we're able to bring back, great information, spread it around, participate in the conversations, and have some influence where we have expertise, but then also absorb in areas where other people have that expertise and be able to take that back. So just great all the way around.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, and that if you look, the world has definitely gotten much smaller because of these organizations, and we're all better for it. That's for sure. So, and I'm kind of looking at our time, and again, we're as is typical, we think, oh, this won't last too long, and we don't even breach all the don't even get to all the subjects that we want. And I think it'd be pretty hard to top ending on the subject that you guys have just talked about, but I'll at least make an effort here. So, Monty, anything to wrap us up?
I'd just like to say, I appreciate CMC for welcoming Doug and I to the table here and having these conversations on these two podcasts. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I've never done a podcast before. Hopefully, my audio came out at the beginning well, and Matt can do his magic and make that sound good. But Doug, I appreciate you facilitating this. If I wouldn't have known that this is not your career, I would have been surprised. You do a fantastic job of facilitating this conversation and keep it going. And I just appreciate CMC for inviting us to the table and be able to have a conversation.
Well, thank you very much, Doug.
Yeah, I'll echo Monty and say thank you, CMC, for having us on. Thank you, Doug, for hosting us and moderating, making sure Monty and I stayed on task and on topic. I know I have a tendency to chat on, so I hope people are still listening. For MRA, just I'll close with I think it's certainly been my honor and to be able to serve as the MRA President. The things that we do every day, it goes all to the teams, and it's all to the people who are to the MRA members who are responding every day. And I think what we try to do in the MRA is to help make their response better. And by sharing this knowledge, sharing information, creating education programs, we hope we're doing that effectively. And I'll put in one quick plug for our spring conference. We have an annual spring conference. This year it's going to be the weekend, I think, of June 10th, 11th, and 12th in Estes Park, Colorado. You can go to the MRA.org website to check that out if you're interested. So I know that team, Larimer County, has puts on a really great conference, and that's a great venue, and I hope folks can make that.
Well, actually, hey, thanks very much for participating and for the good information. And again, we will put up links to the spring conference and to MRA's website on our website on the podcast page. And I got to tell you, just personally, from being the host of these, I'm one of the luckiest people in the world that has the opportunity to be on these podcasts, just to talk to individuals like yourselves. And I learn every time I'm on. It's really been fun, being able to talk with you guys and with others, and just get to know people a little bit more. And I definitely, every time has been a learning opportunity for me, and I really appreciate it. So thanks again to all of our listeners for tuning in to another CMC podcast, and stay tuned for another one.